This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
On your mark, get set, go. I really do mean that. We are going to be marking things up today. We're going to be making marks, and this is all part of expression, discovery, creation, and therapy. It really is. She's an art therapist. I've learned so much since we've had some really great discussions with her. And we started this last time we got together, just drawing, free form. It's amazing what it reveals. That's why she's our professional of the year. Barbara Robertson is back with us. How you doing today?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Real good. Real good.
Good. Ready to make a mark on the world?
I'm prepared and ready.
Awesome. Awesome.
Why, before we even get into that, for those that maybe don't understand or maybe missed last time when we got together, why is this impactful? Just making marks, maybe with a little bit of direction. What is revealed?
Well, you know how I always like to say artwork is heart work. If we pay attention to what we feel on the inside of us as we're making marks that show up somewhere in some way, even if we're making marks in the air just by moving our hand or a fingertip on a surface, we're using energy that comes from the heart that uses our body in a way that is aligned with the kind of energy that we're feeling in the moment. So, for example, when kids are little and they get frustrated with what they're drawing, after they're old enough to want to make a drawing look a certain way, when they get frustrated, you see them take the crayon or the marker and just scribble all over the surface of the painting. And it's partly to block out the mistake so no one sees it, but it's also to discharge that energy of frustration. And that energy is very different from the the energy of feeling calm or even feeling excited. And if somebody's drawing about something that they find really exciting, you might see a lot more kind of pressure in the way the lines are made because there's more energy and excitement than there is in sort of calm relaxation.
Interesting.
So that all is coming from what I conceive of as the heart, which literally the heart is pumping energy into the rest of the body. But also, we've used the heart as a metaphor for centuries as sort of the home of our emotional existence, our emotional life. And I think drawing any kind of visual creating, drawing, constructing, building with blocks, building with Legos, working with clay, modeling things in any way really does kind of tie into that emotional network that sometimes we're not able to name or give words to. And yet the form often can represent the kind of emotional energy that is inhabiting us at the time.
I got such a visual when you spoke about the child, and we've seen it all, with our kids, where, kids like, where they're frustrated and like, and I never saw it through the eyes of therapy until just now, where they're expressing themselves. We get uncomfortable when we see our kid do that. We don't want them to be unhappy. But now I see it as they're letting energy out. They're expressing something, could be frustration, anger, anguish, whatever it might be.
Yeah, just terrible discomfort. I had a very, let me say, fulfilling moment in an art therapy group once with kids that were in grade school, that age. And this young gentleman was trying to draw a picture of himself shooting a basket into the net. And he was old enough, probably 9 or 10, to begin to realize he wanted his drawing to look like what he saw. So beyond stick figures, but not quite understanding how to put the whole thing together, arms and legs and clothing and the basket and so on and so forth. And at one point, he got so frustrated that he took a bunch of crayons and did that whole multi-line scribbling thing. And I just kind of let him go and I watched him. Then he started to tear it up. And that's when I jumped in. I said, "Oh,
Mm.
wait, you've done something really good here. And I don't think you know it." And then I held up the partly drawn, scribbled image and I asked the rest of the group, "What does this look like our friend here was feeling?" And they all said frustrated, mad, angry, upset. And I said, "Is that true?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, you did a fabulous job expressing what was happening for you. This is one of the most awesome little pieces of expressive work I've ever seen." So I really, went over the top with it. And don't you know, the next drawing he did, he executed to his complete satisfaction of himself shooting a basket.
Really?
Yeah, that's the part that really took me by surprise.
What do you think was
Because,
going on there?
well, I think a part of what was going on was he was anticipating criticism and being negatively judged. And so he was trying to make a drawing to meet someone else's standards to avoid the kind of humiliation that kids go through in grade school, sadly, some of them every day of their lives and some of them every week of their lives, but all of them enough to make them just want to avoid it like the plague.
Yep.
So that's what he was trying to do, cover up a mistake that would get him shamed in front of other people. And when that shame was disproven by my response and the kids also understanding what he communicated with the scribbles, he felt like the judge left the room.
Wow.
And then he drew what he wanted to draw in the way that he knew how to draw it.
You took the chains off him.
I created a safe haven. And it's safety that we all need in order to do our best growing.
Um, that's been coming up a lot. I've been
Has
hearing.
it? Okay.
Yes, in my journey, understanding things, why we do what we do,
Uh-huh.
it all comes back to that one word, the S
It,
word with four
yep.
letters. We just want to
Yep.
feel safe. That's it.
Want to feel safe. And safe means, sure, physically safety. That's all good, but safe from being excluded from the community of humans, which
Mhm.
basically is a survival skill. To be excluded from community is basically to be given a death sentence, however slow and painful it may be, at least in our imaginations.
Wow.
And, and so it carries a lot of power, the feeling of wanting to avoid that unsafe feeling that we get when we feel judged as, you know, at fault in some way.
Isn't it amazing when you look back to different moments, different scenarios, different situations, all of that? It really does come back to feeling safe.
It
Even,
really does.
we're all afraid of change. Let's admit it. It's many of us stay away from it. We put it off, whatever it might be. Why? Because it doesn't ultimately feel safe.
That's right. That's right. Our brains and our nervous system, more importantly, are wired to know that familiarity equals safety. Now, that's not always true. If you're in a situation where, you're encountering a lot of negative feedback, that can be familiar and it doesn't feel very safe.
Right.
But it's a little confounding because the familiarity makes it safe, and we may actually gravitate to relationships with other people that treat us also in a less than respectful way because it's familiar, and our brain goes, familiar equals safe. So put up with the disadvantage of it, but familiar feels safe. So we have to almost consciously override that in order to get past that early association.
Easier said than done. Great example, I believe, would be when somebody picks a partner and they could be somewhat abusive and they are, but you still go with it. Why are you doing that? It could be that one of your parents was like that, and it takes you back to a comfortable feeling, if you will. That feeling is safe. So you duplicate that with somebody else because this is what I know. And you
Right.
might not
Well,
even know you're doing it
yeah.
either. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not conscious of it much of the time. It's more or less a subconscious kind of a drive that heads us in that direction. I think it's also hopeful on our part because we're like, well, maybe with this one, I can really get them to meet my needs when I couldn't as a child. I'm grown up now. Maybe I can really make this relationship work because I mean, that's what we're always hoping for. Unfortunately, we only have control over half of that relationship. So,
Hmm.
but I do think it's almost a hopeful action.
Yeah.
But I wanted to show you an example of early mark making by my 2-year-old grandson, who is much too young to have any idea about how something looks, being good or bad or better or worse. And we had a little chalkboard up on the end of the island in the kitchen and a little bucket of big sidewalk chalk because it's more appropriate for his little grip.
Hmm.
Every now and then he'll walk by and make some marks on the chalkboard. And I noticed an interesting development over the last couple of weeks. And if you'll bear with me, I would love to show you
Yeah. Let's
just
take a
four
look.
images of what he's been up to. Okay. Okay, let's see. All right. So this is the first thing I noticed that he did one day at the very end of June. And they're just a little grouping of straight-ish lines. And the things that I want to invite you to notice are how the lines start here and go down. And you can tell that because this
Yes.
part of the mark trails off into a very thin line. So he's starting at the top and just moving his arm down, holding a chalk against the board.
Hmm.
And he did a few of them. He let them wiggle, he let them waver, he let himself start at different heights. Um, and that was that.
I want to add here that for the most part, every line that he's drawn there, and most
Hmm.
of them are vertical. There's one sort of horizontal. They're all about the same size.
Yeah. Hmm.
They're all about the same size, which I find interesting. I don't know why, if there's any significance, but there's I don't know, almost a piece of uniformity. He kept the
Yeah,
same thing going
yeah,
on.
there's some congruity or what we might call coherence in this group of lines.
Yeah.
And none of them are perfectly straight lines. This is probably the best one here, this in terms of how straight it is from top to bottom. But that was not his aim. And I think one of the reasons why they're so consistent is that these little lines were heart driven. They were what he was feeling in his body, what his body wanted him to do. So he just did that. And if I could get that back, that just ability to be in the moment with what wants to happen next,
Hmm.
I think all of us could, just have a much freer and more spontaneous approach to life if we could weed out all the critics and all the concerns.
So,
So here's the next one, and
well,
this
before we go,
happened.
I have one question about that last one there.
Okay, sure.
All the lines are vertical. Why is there only one that's sort of horizontal? Why is there not more?
I couldn't even begin to hazard a guess.
I don't know. I'm just trying to think of, from what he was going on in his mind. I mean, he could have made them all vertical.
That's true. If I had been watching while he was doing it and paying attention, I would have more information about how the lines showed up and whether this is the second line
Okay.
or the last line.
Point taken. All right.
So if it's the second line, it could be, oh, I wonder what else I can do if I move my arm sideways, and then thinking, no, I like just straight up and down better. That felt better.
Mm,
Or he might have done all of them pretty much straight up and down, and kind of like you last week, got bored with having them all go in the same direction and said, oh, what else can I do?
yeah.
And then kind of went diagonal with it and said, oh, okay, now I know that. That's enough.
Okay. I think it's just so cute and cool that, it's a little kid. This could have been adult. This could have been an
Yes.
adult.
Yep.
Doesn't matter.
Yep.
We would never know. Which to me shows that whatever comes from within, it doesn't matter the age.
That's true. That's true. What really comes with age, unfortunately, is the sensor.
Mm,
Not the sensor, the part of us that has the sense of what we want to do, but the sensor, the part who's concerned that we should edit out some of the things we want to do.
yep.
So here he is again. This is my little guy. And notice one thing, how blurry his hand is.
Yeah.
The rest of him is standing pretty still there, but that hand is moving pretty quickly. And he's right-handed, and the pink is in his left hand. So at one point, he used the blue in his right hand. He's still holding it in his right hand, but he picked up a second color with his other hand and threw it into the mix.
Super interesting that you picked up on that and what his reason was, because if he was an adult, pretty good chance he wouldn't be doing that.
Pretty good chance.
Yeah.
I often invite my clients to use both hands when they draw just to experience it and see what happens. And there's also some benefit to crossing the center line and activating both hemispheres in a more directive way to kind of get your brain all tied together so you can access all the strengths you have. And they're often very hesitant to let themselves do that.
I'm
Again,
always analyzing things. I don't overanalyze, I just analyze.
mhm.
And I feel that an adult would not use the other hand or even two pieces of chalk at the same time because we're too caught up in making sure it looks okay. And if you're going to be switching hands to try and do that, there's a really good chance that you don't have the same control and it's not going to look as good in your mind, not going to look as good as you think it should. So I'm not going to mess with the other hand. I'm just going to be intentional with my dominant hand. Kids don't
Yeah.
care.
That's right. I'm so glad you brought that up because one of the points that I really would like to make today is that when we pay more attention to process, to the experience of making marks that allow us to deposit evidence of some level of energy onto the surface or into the
Mm.
material that we're working with, and don't give a lot of thought to how it's quote unquote supposed to look, that it becomes a much more satisfying experience in itself. And I encourage people sometimes, if they really dislike what it looks like after they've done it, even if it felt good, you're perfectly free to tear it up and throw it away. If
Mm.
that helps you feel like you had permission to do it, go ahead and throw it away when you're done.
Yeah.
It's like private personal journaling. No one else needs to see it as long as you experience it and gain what there is to be gained from that particular experience.
I want to make you
Now,
aware, just in terms of time, if we're going to draw some lines.
okay, yep, I'm just going to go through the next two
Sure.
quickly.
Sure.
So here's more of the blue that he added with his right hand. And he went over here and did some vertical stuff with the left and then kind of went diagonal. So he pretty much filled up the board, which if we were standing in front of that board, it would be from like our knees to our head, which is kind of a funny thought. If you had a surface that big in your house that you could just pick up something and make really wide, fat lines on to fill it up as quickly as he filled up this area, what do you imagine that would feel like?
He's good. Like even again, this could have been an adult. And I even see it's almost like I know it wasn't intentional, but what on the upper right looks like a tic-tac-toe board. And
Oh,
you
yeah, it
get,
does.
yeah,
Yep, I see that. Yep, the
hmm,
crisscross.
yeah,
Absolutely. Okay, last one, and then I want to invite you and our listeners and watchers to do a quick experiment with
mm,
making marks.
mm,
This was 2 days later. So this time he's got three colors, not two, and there's almost no straight line in the whole thing, but they're all going in circles. And some of them are counterclockwise because you can kind of see this end stroke this way. So you're going this way. And some of them seem to end that way. And so he was just, again, his
mm.
heart was like, I want to move around. I want to move around. Let's move around with the chalk. And so he did that, did it, finished it, walked away from it. So for him, it's not even something he glances at after it's done. The whole thing's the experience.
So
So,
interesting. Yeah, and I just would love to be in his head, what he was thinking at that moment, what he
oh,
was feeling,
totally.
he was purging.
Yeah,
Hmm.
totally. Want to make some quick marks? I have one
Yeah.
little quick experiment for us. I want to invite you to start by just drawing a few circular marks on whatever surface you have.
Hmm.
Okay, focusing on just moving your hand in circles, making a trail of where your hand went with the marker. And invite you to speed it up a little and then go really slow. Just see what you notice. Okay.
Mm.
Now we're going to scoot over into an empty space on the page and just do straight lines. And I'm going to say straight-ish lines, like the straight-ish lines that were in the first chalkboard effort that my grandson did. And you might try pressing hard as you start and then lifting the marker up off the page. As we could see he had done with the chalk, that makes a little tail. That's actually a pressure difference from the start to the finish. You might want to try using even pressure for the whole line, kind of stopping with the marker still on the page instead of lifting it off. And then you might want to try making several quickly and a couple really slowly.
Mm. I see. See,
So
I
what
see.
what I want to ask you is which felt better for you, the circles or the straight lines to start with?
I would say the circles because it's more free form. And I'll just show you, on the circles, I have a tendency to make it's almost like a nucleus, like
Uh-huh.
they're all
Okay.
working with each other in some way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I even try to gravitate away from what I was doing, just to, why are you doing that? Let's try to, it's almost hard to not do it for me to do it that way, where there's a little circle, then another one around that, then another one around that. Like rings of Saturn. I don't know why I feel I
Okay.
want to do that. And
So
then,
an experiment for you might be to deliberately do the opposite of what you feel like you want. Because I have a sense that what you want has a lot more to do with how it looks than what it feels like. So I want to invite you to explore what would it feel like to start big and then go in, or to make ovals and then make the ovals go in a different direction,
yep.
or make the circles cross over each other. Make a mess with the circles and see what that feels like. And then what about the straight ones?
So straight ones, I was using a much thicker marker than previous.
Hmm.
I like the texture of these lines where it's thick, but you can see they've got some texture to them because of the marker is slightly drying out,
Oh,
slightly.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I do notice between the straight lines and the circles that each one is its own unit. it's almost like that's a finished product. Now I'm on to the next one. That's a finished product. That's on to the next one. Where that's a module, there's another one there. And I try to, you know, do the line so they always touch in this particular one.
Okay, so did you do that by continuously keeping the marker in contact with the surface? So you didn't stop, lift it up, put it
Nope.
back down.
Nope. Yeah.
Okay, so did the feeling of flow as you did that feel any better or worse than the feeling of start, stop, start, stop?
It did. It did. But I'm this is the way I'm programmed. I want to have a goal and I need to let that go. There's always a goal. All right, so I'm going to do the even if it's just a quick little exercise like this, it's all self-contained module and there's the finished product.
Okay, so that tells me that you are still really focused on the product.
On the product as opposed to just the feeling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I got to get out of that.
Do you know what a Buddha board is?
What's it called?
A Buddha board.
I've heard of it, but I'm not sure.
Absorbent surface that you paint with water. No pigment in the water. The paint on the light gray surface makes dark gray marks, but it also begins to evaporate almost immediately. So that's a wonderful surface, a wonderful platform for experiencing what making marks in a certain way feels like that will not let you attach to the visual result and help you really just experience what does it feel like when I make lines that don't cross over or lines that are perfectly straight versus wavy straight lines. What happens in me?
I love that idea because there's no commitment. So you've done it and now it's
Exactly.
gone. On to the next one and now
Exactly.
it's
There's
gone.
no record, there's no trace of it left.
No
It's like
trace of
the
it.
magic, magic ink that, no evidence will ever show that you did that.
I see it in my mind. I've used them before way decades ago.
Uh-huh.
Um, and even when I was younger, like this is kind of magical that you draw it and it goes away. And it's almost the same thing. They used to have coloring books where you just use water and it reveals what's underneath
Right.
it. You know, you
I
you
used
don't
to
know,
love those.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're out of time. It's always so cool
Okay.
talking with you. Like I've tried,
Thank
like
you.
analyzing art. Like there's hints and insight there for all of us. And you learn things about yourself as you do it.
Absolutely. And it's for me, art making is such a rich world that encompasses far more than the very narrow and, constricted way that our culture and society defines capital A art. I just want, my hope is to invite people who never thought about making a mark to experience the joy that is possible to find in doing that, but completely apart from that formal art world.
Hmm.
It's really something. We all started out with visual experience first. Language was way later. And so we have such a deep reservoir to tap into
Never thought of
in
it
those
that way.
experiences. Yeah, we are
Wow.
visually oriented creatures if we are born with the gift of sight. Yes,
Hmm. Your website is the best way to reach you, and that's
yes.
robertsonarttherapyllc.com.
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah.
And you can also email me directly at brobertson.atr@gmail.com. And I would love to have a conversation. If any of you have questions or observations, comments, let's dig into it a little bit. If you're not sure, is it really okay for me to try being an artist when I'm not an artist? I will support you 100%.
Everybody's an artist.
Everybody is an artist.
Yeah. Yeah. And after today's segment, Steve, loosen up a bit. Loosen up. That's what I'm getting for myself. Go free. It's okay. Don't have to make it look a certain way. Loosen that up a bit. Thank you for
Well,
today,
you know
Barbara.
what? Yeah, at one point there was safety for you in doing that. And I want to acknowledge that and offer it some gratitude and tell it, Steve is safe in a lot more ways now than he used to be. So you can let him, make some messy marks too.
And I'm not trying to, it's got to come out perfect because Barbara's watching and other people are seeing it.
No,
It's just,
no,
that's the
I
way it
know.
is.
It's a package deal. It
Yeah.
helps you at some point, and that that there's a commitment to that
Yes.
for
Yes.
for good reason. That's why I wanted to honor that as well.
Thank you for
So,
that.
sure, absolutely.
Always love talking with you, and then we'll catch up next time.
Okay, looking
Appreciate
forward
it.
to it.
Thanks.
Thanks.
We'll be right back.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.